Hello, I'm Lorianne Lumbee with Soul School, and this is The Way of Love. The Way of Love video podcast is an inspirational journey into the ultimate purpose of our lives, to remember our true nature as love. Gathering insights and wisdom from ancient wisdom traditions, I piece together and present the knowledge and tools that we need to transcend division and return to love. What begins as an individual journey blossoms into a movement that has the potential not only to change ourselves, but to change our whole world. Be that love and be that change. Today's topic is the G word. The G word. That which some might call God. It seems as if it's no longer fashionable. In fact, for many, mentioning the G word can have a triggering effect. God has so many names, so many images, so much baggage that has been placed upon this idea of a transcendent source, something that is beyond us, something that some wisdom teachers have said is within us. Human beings for centuries have been creating gods in their own images. Beginning first with nature. Primitive human beings were vulnerable to the ebb and flow, the peacefulness and the violence of nature. Human beings within that vulnerability often felt unsafe and thought of nature as being something outside of their control. But that doesn't mean that human beings didn't try to create ways in which they could manipulate and control nature. Rituals and practices that called forth the rain when the rain was needed. Rituals and practices used to appease angry gods, asking the volcanoes to stop erupting, the sun to stop being so hot, lightning to stop destroying. As human beings evolved, they translated their relationship with nature into a relationship with human-like beings. The sun now becoming Apollo, or given another name. The moon given a name, lightning given a name, Thor. Earthquakes given a name and an image and a being that governed those forces of nature. All of the ways in which nature expressed itself became the gods of primitive human beings and evolved into the temple gods. Gods that were unpredictable, vengeful, jealous, and human beings created stories to describe these gods, to explain their behaviors. They created elaborate rituals, built temples and monuments, all in an effort to hone in and control the forces of nature. If we make a sacrifice to this God, perhaps we will have a fertile harvest. If we donate to the temple that serves as the intermediary between human beings and God, then our needs might be satisfied. Human beings creating gods first in the expressions of nature, but then eventually into faces and names that appeared very human-like, or human-like with some extra features, like the Indian gods with many arms, or the elephant head, or in the form of a monkey. Since time began, human beings have created their own gods. These multiple images of the divine, as monotheism began to emerge out of polytheistic cults, didn't differ much from the many-faced, many-named, sometimes many-armed gods. Or at least they didn't differ in their temperament and personalities. Gods made in human images, jealous, vengeful, punitive, divisive, favoring. Gods that favored their tribe over another. Gods that promised military victory. Gods that charged people to invade and rape and pillage and vanquish neighboring tribes. Gods that placed men in power over women. Gods that proclaimed women to be the source of evil and sin in our world. It's a wonder that the word God has become a G word. How do we speak intelligently, rationally, hopefully, about something that we cannot understand, nor will we fully grasp how we came into being? We don't and will never know the source of our origins. What made us? What made the universe in which we're living? What causes the forces and changes of nature? What has implanted within us drives to survive, to thrive, to create, to make our voices and our presence known in the world, to mate, to collaborate and cooperate, to live in harmony. What is it that compels us to live and move and be upon this plane? We will never know the answer to that question. And yet human beings continue to assign or proclaim knowledge of God. We know how God is. We know what God looks like. We know who God favors. We know who will get to heaven and who won't. We'll know who's condemned. We know how God judges. We know how God punishes. As long as human beings continue to create gods in our own images, we will have conflict. Because human beings are imperfect beings. We have fears. We have unhealed wounds. We've experienced trauma. We often forget to live from a place of love. Or all we've been shown is how to live from a place of hate and division and separation. So as long as we continue to create God in our own image, humanity will be unsatisfied and unable to come together in wholeness. This is also true of those who have transcended ideas of a theistic God or creator or source, who call themselves atheist or who have embraced Eastern traditions that speak of source as presence or peace or wholly within ourselves. The bottom line is none of us know. None of us have any answers. There is one teacher, however, whose words speak at least to the depth of my heart and my soul. And in his writings, he says, God is love. And I'm going to preface, contextualize, comment, qualify that statement. We don't actually know that the author of those writings was a he. The name given to those writings or attributed to those writings is indeed masculine. But could a woman author a sacred text in the 1st century, apply her name to it, and would that name stand the test of time? Just something to think about. Regardless of the gender of the author of these texts, their sentiments, their understanding, their experience of the divine was an experience purely of love. They understood this source, this love, to be the creative force of the universe, an intelligence about which we can never comprehend. And through that love, all things came into being. And everything houses part of that love. Everything is an expression of that love. In other words, we are love walking around. And as the expressions of that transcendent, original, source, origin love, we are one with that love. And we have the opportunity to be in relationship with that love. For the goal of love is connection. The goal of love is relationship. Coming into the knowledge of that source that is love often requires that we lay aside our old images of God. For me, having been raised in the Catholic Church, I couldn't help but envision what was taught to me. What I like to call the old man in the sky God. That old man in the sky God was decisively male, decisively patriarchal, hierarchical, had power and authority over, was a God whose love had to be earned and whose love could be taken away. These kinds of teachings about our source create not only a paradigm within us, but also a woundedness. Because we can't help but feel less than, or there's something wrong with us, or that we're constantly in the search for approval, because we're always under the threat of condemnation. In order to know Source as love, we have to identify, heal, and transform those wounds that were caused by somebody else's image of God. The way of love supports us in that transformation, giving us the tools to identify how have those old gods hurt us? What are the behaviors and the patterns of behaviors that we developed out of that kind of hierarchical theological conditioning? How have we lost connection with the feminine within us? How have we disconnected from our own inner authority, our own truth barometer, our own inner guidance system? When we are subservient to an external human God, it is disempowering. When we understand the divine, our source, as love, there is empowerment. For this love is not something that has to be earned or can be taken away. Instead, it is our own true nature. It's who we are. It's who we are before we came into the conditioning of a broken world. It's who we are before we came into the woundedness of our parents, our peers, our teachers, our pastors, our employers, our friends, our culture. It's who we are at the core. And it is this love that tells us what's true for us. It is this love that guides us on our path. It is this love that fills us with comfort. It is this love that brings us healing. And it doesn't matter how we conceive of this love. Because another great teacher spoke of this love as being within, among, and all around us. So we might think of this love as something outside of us, but the full transformation of our human self happens when we understand that this love is just not outside of us, but also within. And not only is it within ourselves, it's in everything. Everything. It's also present in that which we might perceive as evil in our world. Because love and evil are not separate. Everything moves towards love. And evil is simply that which has not fully realized its love. It is unripe, which is ultimately what the meaning of evil is in the first century Aramaic and Hebrew languages. Evil means unripe. So the way of love invites us to open our hearts, our minds, our being to the presence and the movement, the presence, the invitation, and the movement of love within us. How is love calling us to heal those places within that have forgotten their love? How is love calling us to understand our truth and to live that truth freely in our world? How is love calling us to be love to ourselves and to one another? How is love calling us to be a force of transformation, healing, and change in our world? Be that love, be that change. I'm Lorianne Lumbee with Soul School, and this is the way of love. If you found this to be helpful, inspiring, informative, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're interested in learning more about the programs and the services that we provide at Soul School that help to support us in remembering our original nature as love and living from that love freely, please check out my website, www.loriannlumbee.com. Thank you.